And the drama continues in the presidential elections 2017. Wow. Now the latest is that today there was a bee attack, a very serious bee attack right outside the Supreme Court. Now this strange bizarre incident comes hot in the heels of sightings of Chris Msando's ghost at the IEBC offices. There was even a report that the plate of one of the IEBC officers who aided in the disappearance of Msando disappeared as he was eating. I'm telling you, these elections are just, yeah. And there was even another incident of the ghost of Msando actually slapping somebody. Aye. Now the bees, yeah, very serious bee attack. In fact, it left one person injured. Yeah, but let me just clarify something. You may be wondering what is Chris talking about. All these reports of ghosts and so on are unverified. Yeah, true. Yeah, there are those who believe that ghosts exist, there are those who don't. But my point is this. We have had the presidential elections before. And in those presidential elections, some of them people have been killed. We have not had stories of ghosts. So that is something new. That's what I'm driving at. And not only that, stories of ghosts performing some amazing feats, yeah, which seem to support one side of the political divide. What? Now it gets even stranger. Yeah, according to eyewitnesses, the bees did not touch NASA supporters. The bees were only interested in Jubilee supporters and the police. Okay, granted, the vicinity of the bees was closer to where the Jubilee supporters were. Actually, the bees have been there for some time. Yeah, that's what I've been very authoritatively told. The bees have been there for some time. Okay, and they're on these trees which line up the side of the Supreme Court parking. Yeah, as you head from International Lifehouse towards the roundabout that is directly adjacent to the entrance of the Supreme Court. Okay, the other entrance of the main entrance of the Supreme Court. Okay, you know where there's a water fountain. Yes, so this is the area. There's some trees on the side. If you're coming from International Lifehouse, on your left there's some trees. So apparently the bees have been been at that one of those trees for some time. Okay, but this begs the other question. We had NASA supporters there for the Supreme Court judgment. They didn't attack. We've had ordinary people passing there. They didn't attack. So they choose to attack on the day when the Supreme Court is issuing the final ruling, or rather it's ruling on why it annulled the presidential elections. Now, I'm not superstitious, I'm just stating facts. That's really the fact of the situation. Okay? And then also, strangely enough, it attacks the police. Yeah? But then NASA supporters, where they are, the bees don't reach there. What's going on? Now I really need to mention this before I go on, so you'll allow me to change the topic very briefly. Now, for the first time in the history of Kenya, we have seen the government protesting, going to the streets and protesting. Yeah, that's yet another strange thing in these elections. Okay, what we have had is Jubilee supporters protesting. Now, when you're on the government side and when you're supporting the government, you don't protest, you act. You change whatever there is to be changed and you change it. Protests and picketing are normally the reserve of those who feel they are not able to reach the powers that be, those who feel that they are not able to get justice through the powers that be, those who feel that the government is being too much. Yeah, that's when you picket and you go to the streets and you protest. Yeah, but never ever in the history of Kenya, and I'm just researching whether it has ever happened anywhere in the world, that actually the government side has gone to the street and protested. But actually this has been long coming, because I have mentioned this before in this channel. We have had this strange thing which has come into Kenya. I don't know from where, most probably from the propaganda that has been fed and fed and fed till it becomes reality. And I'm telling you, also fell into this trap. Now, in all my years of practicing journalism, I know that normally the focus of the press is on the government of the day. Okay? The opposition are powerless, therefore they're not newsworthy as such, yeah? Because all the power, all the decisions is made by the government of the day. And therefore you focus all your articles, all your criticism, all your everything on the government of the day. But then there's now this new idea that you have to be balanced for journalists. What do I mean? You have to be balanced in that you criticize the government, then you also criticize the opposition, which are powerless and they're not in power. Yeah? If you're not criticizing the government the same way you're criticizing the opposition, which is NASA in this case, then you're unbalanced. You're biased towards NASA. Yeah, you're for NASA. And this rhetoric has been going on right down from commentators in social media up to very senior government officials. Aye. It's as if we already have a government of Nusumkate, and one half is Jubilee, the other one is NASA. Therefore, the NASA half protests, and then also the Jubilee half protests. Gosh. Aye. This is really strange. Anyway, after that, this thing of being followed by protests on the street by the government, yeah, should not be surprising, because we have been headed in that direction for a long time. I'm telling you, the 2017 elections, yeah, presidential elections, will go down as very historical, with plenty of bizarre, never before seen things happening. Okay? Anyway, back to the bee attack. So this bee attacks, and it's very interesting that the reaction in social media has been hilarious. You know, people have come up with all sorts of memes. Yeah, one very hilarious one suggests that finally the Form 34, the Form 34 bees have finally arrived at the Supreme Court. Kenyans are really creative. Yeah. Anyway, there have been a lot of jokes around it. On a more serious note, a person who was actually disabled, a Jubilee protester who is a disabled person, was actually attacked quite seriously by the bees, and at the time they were rushed to hospital, they were actually unconscious. Okay? Wow, I'm telling you. Okay? We just wish them quick recovery. That was a very unfortunate incident. But maybe before I go, there's just something I want to point out that has really attracted a lot of interest. People have linked this bee attack to the Bible, to the Holy Bible. Yep. And the verse people have been quoting is Exodus 23, 28, I think up to 30, where God promised the children of Israel that He'll go before them and drive out the enemies, the Hivites, the Canaanites, the Hittites. Yeah, He'll drive them out of the way using bees. Yes, He'll send bees before them to do this. Okay. Yeah, it seems that the Almighty God used bees to drive out the enemies of Israel, and NASA people, even NASA prayer warriors, are using that synonym. You know, they're actually referring to this situation as the bees driving out the enemy. Gosh. Now, I cannot comment about that with any authority, so I will just leave it at that. That's what people are saying. Okay? But one thing I'll tell you, this is all very strange. And when you consider all the facts put together, yeah, the bees, the ghosts, so many strange things happening in this particular elections, even the annulment of the elections, which is not normal, okay, then now you definitely have to say there's something more in this election, especially from a spiritual sense of the word, than meets the eye. Okay? Now, I cannot resist mentioning that one of my early videos, which what I did is that I collected all the prophetic words that had been spoken about the elections. Yeah, I picked from men and women of God I really trust, and I created a video. You'll remember in one of those videos I said that according to the word that came through the servants of God, there will be a lot of lying prophets. You know, in the Bible we see sometimes God puts we see an incident where God puts a lying tongue, yeah, in prophets. So when they started prophesying false things. Yeah. Now, you know, the only judge of a true prophet, I mean, the only way you judge whether a prophet really has heard from God is if whatever they're prophesying comes to pass. Okay? Now, we have seen that a lot of the prophecies that indicated, and there have been many of them, a massive number. In fact, every prophet, very few prophesied in a different way. A vast majority of them are prophesying for a smooth, comfortable Jubilee win. Now, of course, that has not come to pass. Okay? So, this is just one of those things that, well, some people interpret it differently. They say that a lot of these servants of God have allowed themselves to get emotionally involved. Yeah, emotionally involved in the local politics. Yeah, and you see, when you're emotionally involved in something, you can actually prophesy, you can declare. I'm not making any excuses for these men and women of God, but it would seem that a lot of them were making proclamations based on what they were feeling emotionally, where they felt their heart was. Yeah. Until next time, this is Chris Kumekucha.